I want to start now. I am Gil Cedillo, and I am the new Housing Chair, and I welcome each and every single one of you. I am very excited about the prospects of chairing this committee and very happy to see all of you here. I just want to say a few things. That I have a great sense of urgency. I think we have incredible challenges that are before us. I think that we can really lead both not just in the city but in the region. And I look to continue much of my work in the Capitol. Many may know I was the author of SB 2 in Sacramento and also the author of the Downtown Rebound. Both those are controversial proposals. Both have their great fans and their great detractors. But as we saw this afternoon, progress and change doesn't happen without that type of controversy and conflict. And we would like to hope and think that we could have that discourse around those types of issues in this committee, but in a way that's very civil and respectful of all positions. I want to encourage you and my colleagues to think big, to think about the challenges that confront us, the new circumstances, and how we move forward. We have seen, and I saw up close, up front, the elimination of the CRA by our governor, and that creates new challenges for us. It means, what do we do now in the absence of the CRA? What will things look like? What will it mean to those who need to obtain loans or social bonds or public-private partnerships? A whole myriad of questions will come up. We need to start thinking about incentive zoning that encourages and stimulates development. We have shortages of all types of housing, market rate, low income, special needs. The whole myriad is lacking, and we need your leadership and your participation to move this forward. I still remain idealistic in the sense that I believe that we can create a community and a city where every person has a decent place, a safe place, a responsible place to sleep at night and to live. And so I want to welcome all of you. My colleague, Felipe Fuentes, is well versed in these matters as well. And we will, you guys are going to be able to have the whole Sacramento experience in this one committee. It's unique in that way. And I think what you'll see is that it will be marked by a different, a new civility and a new sense of cooperation and a collaboration. We all share the same values, the same goals, to make this a livable city and to make sure that we have the appropriate balance and the adequate supply of housing and living units for each and every single Angelino. So with that, Mr. Fuentes, I want to welcome you and make time available for you to make your first committee statements, I believe, in your new tenure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. I do want to echo Chairman Cedillo's insight and desire to make sure that this city is doing the best it can to have responsible, fair, and equitable housing. And I'm really excited to be able to serve, Mr. Cedillo, with you and our colleagues, in particular with the experience that the state of California, I think, has demonstrated during the worst economic times of our state history, and having watched and understood an awful lot about what has been done in terms of housing. I think we're going to be able to complement the city's mission in making sure that we have a sustainable, healthy, housed city. So with that, I'm excited to hear from staff.
Yes, I note, probably one of the things you and I know immediately is that we're not up in a dais. We're here up front. Yes, please, may we hear from our city clerk.
Okay, item number 4 is a CAO report relative to authorization for the LAHD to execute a Fourth Amendment to contract number C117625 with Realty Advantage Incorporated DBA Altera Real Estate for the term beginning July 1st, 2013 through December 31st, 2013, and authorization to release a request for proposals for real estate broker services. The CAO is here to make a presentation.
Okay.
Good afternoon, council members, and welcome. My name is Madeline Rackley. I'm the housing analyst with the city administrative officer, so you'll be seeing quite a bit of me with reports and things like that.
Thank you.
And I'm pleased to meet you both and hope we can be of service to you.
Madeline, one brief second before you.
Absolutely.
We have a senator has just entered the chambers, and so when a senator enters, they bring their own. So, Mr. Price, Mr. Fuentes has just finished opening comments, and we welcome you to the dais. And
Mr. Chair, I'm just happy to be here.
well, we all are.
Look forward to working with everyone.
Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Madeline Rackley with the CAO, and as I mentioned, we'll be here frequently discussing housing issues and hope to work with you and your staff to support you and help with housing issues in the city. The item before you today is a contract amendment, as the CLA mentioned. This will extend the proposed contract for 6 months while the Housing Department produces a request for proposals for services, because we're at the end of this particular contract time. And Representative Mr. Swager from the Housing Department is here to talk about the contract and answer any questions you may have. But the CAO is in agreement with extending and amending the contract for the 6 months while they do the RFP. No additional funds are being requested, just an extension of time.
Sure.
Councilman, hi, Doug Swager with the Housing and Community Investment Department, formerly Los Angeles Housing Department. It's a privilege for me to be here in front of you all, and welcome. This particular item, it's for a contract with a real estate company. We had done a request for proposals about 3 years ago and selected this particular real estate company to represent us on selling properties. Sometimes the housing department takes back properties, or if they go into foreclosure, and we have to sell them. So we go out to the community to get real estate agents. And so we select this particular one, and we went out for RFP for a larger department one a few months back that included real estate services and a number of other services, maybe engineering, and like a whole list of them. And we got no responses from the real estate agents. And so the intent of this...
I'm sorry, no responses. You think why? It was...
Because we didn't market it well enough, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the intent of this one is to extend this particular contract with this agent while we prepare to go out again specifically for real estate agents.
What are you going to do different?
We're going to outreach to folks. I think, when we did it last time, because it was part of a larger RFP, we did the sort of the standard processes that the city does and didn't do any real specific outreach to agents. And this time we are going to do that. And going forward, we will do that as well.
Okay. Mr. Fuentes?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is there any focus on, or any emphasis on local brokers? I mean, do you try to distinguish? Do you try to, support local brokers as opposed to maybe somebody who's in Orange County bidding to do the deal?
No, absolutely. The outreach is done through, there's a computerized system in the mayor's office that reaches out, and we do.
Is there a preference for local agents in this process?
You know what? I don't know the answer.
We can get back to you on that. We do have some local preferences for different contracts, but we can get back to you on that.
Well, it seems like real estate would be certainly one where you want to take advantage of
Sure.
folks who kind of know the area.
No, absolutely.
I mean, there's no guarantee that you have
They
a
know
business
by
here,
the-
you know the
That's
area,
where they work.
as opposed to entertaining, bids from folks
Yes,
outside the area.
just got word that there is a scoring benefit for local agents.
Okay.
There is?
There you go.
Yes.
See how fast you are?
Well, you're amazing.
slow.
See?
That understand
Amazing.
their community that they work in.
Okay, we have public comment on this. I have cards on Bill. Is it Bill Huey? Where's Bill? Bill, how are you? Bill, how you doing? Come on up.
We're against, I'm the president of Fair Housing Coalition. We're a group of landlord activists that we believe in fairness and equality under the law for both landlords and renters. And the housing department has an agenda that everything they do seems to be anti-landlord. I'll explain that in my general public comment. I'll just give you one example. But, they don't reach out to landlord associations. They don't want us to sit and talk to them. They come up with these agendas that are just totally anti-free market, anti-capitalism, and I guess the word profit is a dirty word. And they just make so many rules that we're against items 3 and 4. And this is not general public comment, right, at this time, right?
This is your specific comment to the proposal.
Yeah,
The
we're against
extension
that
of the
proposal.
agreement. So you're against the extension?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got Louis Eisenstein, is that correct? Louis, did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I never even heard of this outreach broker, these contracts that the housing department is giving out. They said the housing department is getting properties that were bank owned and then selling them. I've never even seen this on the website. I've never even seen it. Who do they sell it to? Where are they marketing it to? Why are they getting paid money? This is very shady. So I'm totally against this. I know if you look at a lot of the audits in the housing department, if you see what the housing department's buying and selling back, the numbers don't add up. Someone's making a lot of money. I don't know who, but this contract, there's something in cahoots with the broker and the LAHD. That's my feeling. So I'm against it.
Okay. And then I have George Versegian. Is that correct? George, how are you?
The reason I'm here is I have been generally overwhelmed with the way
Can you speak?
Yes, sit down, George.
I've been overwhelmed throughout the years the way I've been treated by LAHD. First time I encountered them was in 1998, and after I was done with with their inspection, I did everything that they wanted because I just acquired the property. It was an 8-unit in Tahanga. And,
George, can I ask you just a little bit to focus specifically on the
they,
proposal?
after I finished their instructions and their stuff that I need to fix, they give me an award.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the time I have had rentals for so many years, they keep jacking up the things. They became completely enemies. Their animosity is just, you can tell every time they come to you, they give you nightmares. I mean, they go through things that you couldn't even imagine. They're going to point fingers on it, which is after you fix it, it has no relevance. It doesn't make anybody's life better or worse. I mean, they're just pointing out things that I can tell you horror stories. My son-in-law lost...
I know, but George, right now we need to focus on the extension of the contract, whether why you're for it or against it.
I'm totally against it, sir.
Okay.
I appreciate your listening to me.
No, thank you, George. Thanks
God
for being here
bless you.
today. God bless. Finally, we have Dr. Tony Williams on the question of the extension of the contract.
Just to confirm, this is item 4?
Yes.
Okay.
You're Dr. Tony Williams?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, Land Use and Development Committee, Transportation Subcommittee.
Doctor, please.
relationship of the housing department with the neighborhood councils issue. We never hear of them until it's too late. We hear about foreclosures on occasion, but it's usually too late to help. So for, the request for proposals for real estate broker services, we would like to have that advertised also through the neighborhood councils, because a lot of neighborhood councils have real estate brokers. So we would like to have the housing department include circulation for this RFP to all of the neighborhood councils. Out of 95, they should have somebody. And those people have stakes in our neighborhoods, in our districts. So I would highly recommend that you add to any RFP that it's noticed and circulated to the neighborhood councils so that they could perhaps stimulate more response. Thank you.
Fish where the fish are, right? Fish where the fish are.
Yeah.
Right? People are interested in neighborhood councils. They're active. They're civically engaged. So we should see if we find people there who are interested in these contracts.
Well, I'm waiting for transportation committee, so amen anyway.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. You, Councilman? You want to comment? Do you have any objections to some of these proposals, like communicating directly to neighborhood councils as part of your outreach program?
No, I think that's a good idea, and we can do that.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay. Good. Just receive and file. Okay. Somebody help me here. How do we do these motions?
Unanimous approval.
You need to approve the amendment.
You worked here before.
Yeah, so you, Mr. Chair, if I would suggest that you approve the amendments and move them forward to council.
Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you.
Objections? Thank you.
Councilman, I understand you want to hear items 1, 2, and 3 together, so I'm going to go ahead and read those 3 into the record. Item number 1 is a city attorney to report relative to the status of an ordinance amending Article 4 of Chapter 16 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code to establish a foreclosure registry inspection fee in the amount of $274.33, and city attorney to report with the assistance of the Los Angeles Housing Department on the status of the foreclosure registry fund. Item number 2 is a motion Labange for Garcetti Krikorian relative to an instruction for the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety to report on the status of their current enforcement efforts under the foreclosure registry program and to present a swift action plan for implementing ordinance number 181185 in order to protect Los Angeles neighborhoods. And item number 3 is a motion Garcetti Alarcon relative to an instruction to the CLA to report on the implementation of habitability inspections by the LAHD on the Department of Building and Safety of tenant-occupied properties on the foreclosure registry, including a fee study and staff requirements as part of its report to council on the foreclosure registry program.
Okay. All right. Yep. Take from the public. Can we take
The
up?
Housing Department is here to make a presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rushmore Cervantes with the Housing and Community Investment Department. Good to see some of you again. I'm joined by Roberto Aldape, Assistant General Manager with the Housing and Community Investment Department as well. We just wanted to take a couple of moments since we've got 3 items. Just wanted to set the table for the discussion about the foreclosure crisis and the eventual creation of the foreclosure registry. For a 5-year period, the City of Los Angeles was hit hard by the foreclosure crisis. We sustained approximately 56,000 properties that were foreclosed during that 5-year period. What came with that foreclosure crisis was also the economic downturn, which resulted in many banks, an example, not maintaining their properties, and they slipped into disrepair and became a blight in the community. So the city, back in 2009, decided that it needed to do something about all of these properties that were bank-owned and unmaintained. So the idea was to create a foreclosure registry whereby banks would have to register the properties that are foreclosed, whether it be single-family or multifamily, along with properties that are in notice of default. the city began registering that through the housing department in order to be able to determine which banks were being held. So that's one part, was the registration, so at least the city of Los Angeles could know which properties in the city of LA have been foreclosed.
We're creating an inventory.
Inventory
Occupied and unoccupied.
Correct. And a fee was granted of $155 each year in order to cover the cost of maintaining that foreclosure registry. There's the other part of it now. That's the actual inspections. Within the housing department, they are responsible for all multifamily properties that are occupied. That's 750,000 units throughout the entire city of Los Angeles. Again, occupied. We already have a systematic code inspection program in place whereby the department goes out on a periodic basis, usually every 3 to 4 year cycle, to inspect all single-family properties. Multifamily properties. In addition to that, it also has a complaint component, so the department responds to any kind of complaints. The other side of the house,
From citizens?
any complaints that may come, typically from tenants.
Tenants?
Right. So there's that component. The other piece of the equation is the single family, and that's where the majority of the foreclosures occurred. And to be able to go out on a response basis, on a complaint basis, the building and safety, unfortunately, just did not have the bandwidth due to budget cuts to be able to go out on a response basis to be able to address that. And building and safety will address that. To modify and change and enhance the program, a couple of actions needed to take place. First of which, on the registration, when it was originally contemplated and approved, there were two options for banks to be able to register. There was a national MERS system, mortgage electronic registration system, where they could register nationally, or they could register with the City of Los Angeles where they were charged. Unfortunately, there was no interface between the two systems, so the only way that the City of Los Angeles could ever determine whether a property had been registered with the MERS system versus the City of Los Angeles would actually have to send an email or pick up the phone and call on an individual property. It just wasn't effective. So beginning this calendar year, January 1st of this year, the City of Los Angeles eliminated the MERS option for all banks in the City of Los Angeles. They have to register with the City of Los Angeles. That way, this department our department as well as the City of Los Angeles will have a complete comprehensive list of all properties that are foreclosed or in notice of default state. We'll have to go through a process of cleaning up what we don't have from MERS. We've contracted with an outside consultant to help us clean up those numbers so we can have full reconciliation. We anticipate within the next couple of months we should have a clean record of all the properties that are in notice of default through foreclosure. The other component of what needs to be addressed, and this is the reason why we have the ordinances in front of you, are to make enhancements to the city's ability to address properties that are abandoned or bank-owned that fall into disrepair. And this is the biggest problem that the City of Los Angeles has. Primarily in the multifamily properties that are occupied, there is an issue because there's a system in place. On the single family, that's where you have the ordinances in place now in order to enable for a fee to be assessed to give Department of Building and Safety the ammunition, give them the resources to be able to go out and inspect. Through the last fiscal year, at the end of fiscal last year, in a budgetary action, $877,000 was earmarked from the Foreclosure Registry program, the fund itself, to be transferred to the Department of Building and Safety to fund 6 staff to provide seed money to Building and Safety to begin in earnest to start conducting the inspections on a proactive basis. As I understand, they've probably got about 5,000 properties that they'll have to look at and determine which ones are the priorities to start inspecting. And of course, we'll let Building and Safety come up and address that. So from a holistic approach, the city's been looking to address the foreclosure crisis, those properties that are particularly that are vacant and are abandoned, and coming up with a seamless way to be able to, between the two departments, to be able to address those needs. Like I said, on the multifamily, we feel like we've got a good system in place. Now we just have to shore up the single family to ensure that we have the proper resources, and then that we also now, with the enhancement or the elimination of the MERS option for the banks, now we will have a comprehensive list of all the properties that are out there so that we can actually then communicate to all the council members the properties on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis. Will determine what the periodic period will be, so we can notify the council offices to what properties have been foreclosed in their community and or notice of default. So with that, I think that probably wise. I'm not sure, Roberto, if you have anything else to add. We may bring up Department of Building Safety or City Attorney's Office to address some of the other options or the other items on the ordinances, unless you have any questions specifically of Roberto or myself.
Mr. Fuentes.
I do. It's good to see you again, Mr. Cervantes. It's been a
likewise.
while. I'm a little confused, and I apologize because all I know is that sort of what I've been reading in the newspaper as the motion went forward. But it seems to me that you mentioned that this was primarily, well, at least you've got a contractor right now that's trying to create an inventory of these the non-multifamily.
But it's basically, well, no, the contractor's in place so that we can reconcile all of the notice of default and foreclosed properties so that they're all registered. So we know that who has not registered. So the one piece you have to separate the two, in essence, is the registration. So who's out there that has a property that's either notice of default or foreclosed. So that's one process. The other piece is the actual inspection. So there's two actually separate matters. But when we do get a complaint, the process right now has been if the house department receives a complaint that happens to be a single family or a multifamily that's vacant, we would refer that to building and safety. If building and safety receives something that's a complaint on a multifamily property that's occupied, they would refer it to us. I'm just saying that right now there aren't enough resources on the building and safety side to be able to proceed to provide the response that is needed for the community, and that's what the ordinances are here in place for.
And I guess where my confusion lies is that I thought this was a complaint-driven sort of process.
Yes.
But it sounds as if you all are creating an inventory of all of the potential sort of complaints out there and then queuing the work based on the complaints that you get, but you're still building an inventory. Is that the...
That is correct. It's for informational purposes, for planning purposes, so obviously council office and the mayor's office can understand what's in their community, but at the same time, the fact that they are registered, they are noted that they have to maintain their property in a certain manner, so that gives us the ability then to go, if you will, enforce those properties, whether it be in the single-family or multifamily side.
I see. And I understand this is just sort of a status report on the overall program at this point, but it was LADBS funded in fiscal year 13-14 in order to have the resources necessary to go research those complaints?
Yes, and I'll let them speak to it, Councilman. Basically, we provided them seed money, $778,000 to hire 6, and they have to go through the managed hiring committee and get the authorities that way, and welcome back to the city and this whole process. But it will take them some time, but they can give an update as to how soon they can get the boots on the ground to start providing inspections.
And that would be, and I think you suggested bringing up LADBS and the city attorney's office to understand how that managed hiring process is going to facilitate getting the needed personnel there. And I see Mr. Bush has joined us. And also understanding sort of the city attorney's office and where they are in the drafting of the ordinance. So I think that would be fantastic to hear
Certainly.
from them.
And we'll be here if you have any further questions. But again, I think that the city as a whole is tried in earnest to be able to address this. And it's since 2009, we've tried it, and it's just a matter of tweaking the approach, tweaking the ordinances to find, sharpen the edge of will so that we can have a productive program.
Actually, as I think about this, so the notice of default, and my colleagues having wrestled with a lot of the legislation in Sacramento, there is, I imagine that there's a lot of properties that will fall through the sieve here because, the notice of default goes out in foreclosure, and I forget what the law is now, but I don't think it exceeds 180 days. So there's probably problematic properties out there that were never, well, I shouldn't say never, but the system isn't up yet, and so they're still going to continue to be a nuisance on the community. And I guess how much longer do you think it'll be before we get LADBS, and that's the question for them, staffed up, the city attorney's ordinance in place, and what are we doing in the interim to make sure that we're abating these nuisance properties? Right,
and I'll let them address that, but I just will let you know that what has happened in the past, again, it's been complaint-based. There was a news story in Channel 11 News a couple of weeks ago about a property, and the neighbors were complaining that the home was vacant and that people were occupying it and dealing drugs out of it and the like. And the reporter asked, well, how come you're not doing anything? We contacted our colleagues at Building and Safety. Have you received any complaints about this? Nothing. The House Department not received one complaint. So unless we know, there's nothing we can do. But with this new approach, on the proactive manner, we should be able to address that. There will be some backlog of obviously we have to go through, but the goal is to eventually get to the point where when a bank registers, immediately we're going out and doing a site inspection to ensure that they're maintaining their property and noting them if they're not.
How many properties are in the inventory, currently in the inventory? is incomplete as it is. How many
Total
do we
registration.
have, or do we think we have? Yeah.
Councilmember, total registration is 7,166 currently.
And we think it could potentially be, what, twice that, 3 times that? Or
That is why we're purchasing the data directly from the county recorder to see which notice of defaults are being recorded on a daily basis. We'll reconcile that with the registration in our system and then come out with a number of those folks who
Yeah.
have not registered and notify them that they have to register.
Yeah. Well, I share my colleagues' concern, and certainly that of the community, is what we're doing in the meantime. What happens in the meantime? I know that there are many instances of abandoned properties in the neighborhoods, and unfortunately, in many neighborhoods, that condition has existed for a long time. And it's not surprising that people don't complain. You know, you complain initially, and then after the 3rd month, 4th month, 5th year, 6th year, you stop complaining. So it's that interim process that I think we really need to pay some close attention to, so that we don't, let these properties fall through the cracks, so we don't let the property owners off the hook. And I guess we're going to have some conversation with the city attorney in terms of
Because one of the issues you're going to have,
enforcement.
one of the issues you're going to have, Councilman, is that when you have a foreclosed property, the bank owns it. So they tend to be more responsive. If you've got a property that's in notice of default state, the bank hasn't taken possession of that. The property owner, well, if they're in notice of default, they're not apt to probably start maintaining their property just because the city of LA has asked them to do so. That's that gray area that we're going to have to address in before they hit the foreclosure. And the banks is one thing, but if you're dealing with the property owners, that's something else. And that's something the city attorney's office and the CLA's office is looking at as well to try to figure out what's that nexus. How can we hold the bank potentially accountable?
So we have been collecting some funds, though. We've been
Yes, we have.
How much has been collected?
We've collected approximately $4 million over the last 3 years. And
that's just in an account somewhere drawing interest, or is it being?
Yes, we do collect interest on that, Councilman.
But as Mr. Cervantes stated, rest assured, Councilmember, that as in regards to multifamily, we have our systematic code enforcement that systematically goes out to folks' property inside and outside and inspects for violations of code violations. On our complaint basis, we will respond within 72 hours unless it's urgent, and then we will respond within 24 hours.
So then we're because I think for us the focus is on these abandoned properties that are vacant, and then distinguishing between the complaint-driven process. That we ramp up promptly, and that we then move aggressively in getting them all in the registry so that they're all to code and removing blight from the community.
We're in absolute agreement, Councilman.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank Bush. I'm the chief of the Building and Safety Code Enforcement Bureau.
Steve Ongala, Chief Financial Officer of Building and Safety.
And just to bring you up to speed on the foreclosure, as Rushmore mentioned, in 2009, when the registration was first started, there was no funding at all given to the Department of Building and Safety to do proactive inspections, to go out and look at any of these registered properties. We were in the midst of getting severe budget cuts and staff cuts at that time, and so there wasn't any funding provided for that. So we have responded all along to complaints. Any property, whether it's vacant or it's occupied and there's violations on it, we have continued to respond on a complaint basis and take action on them. As far as vacant properties, we have approximately 700 citywide that we have dealt with that were vacant and open. So now we're in a process of either being secured or have been secured and cleaned. And I'll give you a quick...
And is that responsibility of the city? Are we taking that responsibility on, or we're...
We do. The Department of Building and Safety does. We will inspect it. If a building is vacant and open, the doors or windows are broken, whatever it may be, it's open and there's trash and debris and those kind of things, we issue an abate order. We give an amount of time on the order for the owner to bring it into compliance. If it's not done, the city we have annual contracts with board-up, cleanup contractors, fencing contractors if necessary. We will have the work done. Then the city pays for it. It's leaned to the property with an additional 40% on the cost, so it's leaned. So eventually down the line, we'll get our money. We have an issue with that time period, as you've discussed already, where nobody owns it. It's still owned by the original owner, and the bank hasn't taken it over, so those are in limbo. We will still take action and do those. However, we can only do that work on vacant properties that are open. So if there's a property that's vacant and secure, we have no authority to go in and remove any trash and debris. So if the windows aren't broken, doors aren't broken, or cut the vegetation down or things like that. However, we will still issue an order and try to get it done through the process with the bank or the person that owns it, because technically they're still responsible for it. But how far we would get with it if we had to file a court action on it is, it varies. It's case-by-case basis. So recently we have looked at, we've been given a number of approximately 5,000 properties that are single-family dwellings that are in the registry that would be eligible for us to go out and do a proactive inspection. So with that 5,000 number, we calculated we need 5 inspectors and a supervisor to run that program. We came up with the price, which is $274, I believe it is, to charge for to be paid during the registration process that will pay for the staff to do that work. The managed hiring, my understanding is that we are clear on the managed hiring on those. Is that true?
Managed hiring, we do have a blanket authority to be able to hire for any positions that are funded through fees in the Department of Building and Safety.
Right.
The only complication, though, is we do expect that when we provide this service, it is a proactive-based service where the banks will prepay when they register with housing. So at this time, we don't have the mechanism, but in addition to that, there's no ordinance to allow us to charge the banks for the services, the inspection services. But in addition to that, while City Council allocated us positions for this year, we still have to get civil service approval for position allocation. We believe that's going to take place probably sometime towards the end of August. And then once that takes place, assuming that the ordinance is in place, then potentially we'll be able to hire. However, before we hire, it is important to note that there's a civil service process. At the moment, there's no civil service list, and so we have to request a test. We can't request that test until we get position allocation. So we're still waiting. There's a process, and we're going to go through the process. We're very confident that at the end of the day, when the ordinance is done, we will be able to start the inspection process.
And I can tell you that we will start it right away. As soon as we'll be ready to go as soon as the moment we have the staff in place. So we won't be having to do any long-term training with them because we use some trained staff that'll start the program. The other thing is then there was another motion that was introduced to amend, to add to this that we do some habitability inspections on tenant-occupied single-family dwellings. So we've been working with everybody, the CLA's office, and we're waiting for them to determine a number out of that 5,000, how many are actually tenant-occupied single-family dwellings that we would go out and do a habitability inspection on the interior of the single-family dwelling. When we get that number, we'll come back with that, but we're not waiting, till that's done to move forward on this. We're trying to get the positions filled now at this point.
Yeah. Steve and Frank, it's good to see you both again.
Thank you.
So let me understand. So on the managed hiring practice, so it sounds as if we need the personnel department to
the civil service
out, or because it seems to me that if it's a fee-supported program, you're saying that managed hiring isn't it won't sort of delay the process. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't believe that it's going to delay the process. All that we need to do is to enter the position in a system called PACER, and then the CAO will approve. It is our assumption that they will approve it immediately because it's fee supported.
But did I also hear you say that you need an enacting ordinance to be able to collect the fee from the banking institutions?
The $274, because we do expect that this is going to be the fee supports the positions.
Right.
It is indeed true that we've been front funded, but I do believe that it is the expectation of City Council that when we inspect this property, the owners or the banks have to pay.
Right.
And the only way we'll ensure that is if the ordinance is in
place.
place.
For us, sort of say the 1, 2, 3 steps that need to happen, would it be that we have to get and I'm wondering if the city attorney is helping draft the ordinance that gives us the ability to collect the fee, number one. Number two, from the managed hiring perspective, are we doing what we need to be doing with the personnel department and you all to get the list out so we can, it sounds like Mr. Bush says that we're ready to go. It's just a matter of sort of, what are the three things that we need to do?
Number one is we need to get the Civil Service Commission to allocate the positions to the department. Number two, we need to get the ordinance approved so that we can charge the fee. We cannot charge the fee without the ordinance approval.
And is the city attorney working on that concurrently with this ordinance here, the registry? Or is that what they're finalizing?
It is my belief that they're doing that, but in addition to that, City Council had also instructed to create a fund where this money is going to go to make sure that it pays for the positions that are doing the inspections.
Got it. And the third thing that we need to do in order to get you all the personnel?
I think that
it's two things.
It's just two things.
Oh boy, should be easy, right, Ivania? Yeah. All right. Thank you.
So my questions are basically the same, except how do we expedite this? How do we move this forward with a greater sense of urgency? So, for example, on the civil service, this period of bringing together a list, I mean, can't we use old lists? Can they be exempt? What's the process for us to expedite this? So that
there has to be an exam that's given to prospective candidates who are going to be applying for these positions. Unfortunately,
we had these positions in the past. We've
had them in the past, but the list that we had expired, right, and so we have to create a new list.
Again, can we revitalize it? Can we go backward so that we don't have to wait?
It can only be done when the list is still alive. Unfortunately, the list is now dead, and we have to do a new exam. We have to do a new test. Personnel department can potentially be compelled by City Council to start a test. Normally, what we do is once we get the position allocation, then we request a test. Another way to get personnel to do a test is to have emergency appointments. So that actually compels them to do it within 6 months. But I don't think that's going to be necessary because I do believe that they understand the urgency to get this done.
Ms. Bryson, I'm going to rely on Mr. Fuentes to tell me ways that we can get this done sooner.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, but it seems to me that Ms. Whalen, I'm sure, is the general manager for the personnel department, is certainly aware of what we need to be doing, and I think in the spirit of this status report, it gives us, and the chair in particular, the ability to talk with the city attorney's office, which I'm sure we're going to hear from next.
Yep.
And it sounds like we're moving along. I just was, I hope I didn't sound as if I didn't think things were moving. It sounds like
right.
we've shortened the list of two things that need to happen, and I think we know where to go now.
Correct.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Steve.
Can we have the city attorney?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Adrienne Coruscani. I'm with the City Attorney's Office in the Land Use Division. I represent Building and Safety.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Breithaupt. I represent the Housing Department.
So we've been participating in the meetings with the CLA's office and the departments, working through this ordinance. I was a part of the team that drafted the first ordinance, and as you've heard explained, that was more of an information gathering ordinance intended to be complaint driven, and since then there have been a number of discussions that indicate more is needed. At the last council meeting where motions were approved, we were given a direction to work on the ordinance with the department with the numbers that existed and were known by the CLA's office at that time. At that meeting, a motion was introduced by then Councilmember Garcetti to include those proactive habitability inspections that you heard the Department of Building and Safety refer to. We were also asked to do additional legal research on including properties with a notice of default in the scope of the ordinance to be able to capture those properties that aren't quite in foreclosure yet. As of now, we are working on the research. We've been connecting with the California Monitor, who is working to support the settlement that was reached by the State Attorney General's office. They've helped us with the research as far as NODs go. We're still in the middle of determining what we can do with those properties as far as our ordinance is concerned. We're also in contact with the City of Oakland and the City of Vallejo. They are cities that have similar programs. They're smaller than ours, obviously, but they may have existing research that can help us narrow the scope of our research to determine what we can do in the City of Los Angeles.
In Oakland, they raise more money. Is this because they have smaller staffs and it costs them more, or because they're getting a greater benefit for the community, or
It's unclear.
distinction?
I haven't looked at their fee study. Again, I've been focusing on just the scope of the NODs and how they're capturing them, but it's unclear as to what the analysis was to establish their fees. I'm not sure what their numbers are as far as foreclosed properties versus NODs goes. That's something that I'm hoping to find out.
Essentially, I'm going to be working on the ordinance aspect of this, and as Adrian mentioned, we're working collaboratively with staff from Building and Safety and the Housing Department. And so my understanding, based on the council files, and I'm a latecomer to this whole issue of the Foreclosure Registry Ordinance, but my understanding, based on the comments today and also from the council file and public records, is that we are to give full breadth to the intent and written instructions from the various committees leading up to today. And so what we're doing is working on everything with respect to the many issues, including cost recovery, maintenance, implementing processes and procedures for the respective departments concerning registration, keeping track of the database, providing due process hearings in appeal processes for administrative decisions that are made so that we can perfect the administrative decision making, so that in the event that there are lawsuits or remedies sought, we can have a process in place that comports with the law. In addition, we're going to be working on basic things such as implementing forms for the participants in the program to report to the city on a regular basis. We're discussing monthly reporting, especially in light of the fact that it's proactive enforcement, which contemplates at least biannual inspections. So there's many aspects to the municipal code pertaining to our respective clients, because the statutory authority in the municipal code for the inspections is different for building and safety. As in some respects, it's different for building and safety than it is for the housing department. So we're working together, and we have meetings set, and so we are proceeding. I've actually started drafting the ordinances, but it will be a period of time, but we believe it's commensurate with the reporting that will be provided to you with respect to the fee studies.
If I let me thank you first, because I understand exactly what it is that your mission is to make sure that we're conforming and legal as we develop this new system. But I think you can also well imagine that there's a real sort of urgency by many of the people that are involved, and this doesn't take, rather it takes a lot of time, and it's not as fast as we all want it to sort of occur. So I'll apologize in advance for asking for timelines. But I'm just wondering out loud, are there, you mentioned there's a whole sort of host of things that have to be developed in order for us to have a program that's functional and legal and serves the purpose that was intended by the first initial motion and then subsequent sort of renditions of it. But are there best practices at the League of California Cities or the National League of Cities that help us expedite this process, understanding that every jurisdiction and the fact that we're a charter city makes us, I think, a little bit unique? But are there some, with the exception of the fee schedules that have to be developed for our city, are there some examples out there where we can sort of glean from and hopefully expedite this process? Because it seems to me that if I can be so bold, the budgeting part of this is probably the easiest component, because there's a fee, a revenue source with the banks that will fund this, but it seems that this part is the part that's going to take probably the longest to sort of get it going, hoping that the personnel part isn't going to sort of slow us down. What's your expectation in terms of a timeline, and can we glean some best practices somewhere else so we can sort of get this up and going very quickly?
I think the answer to your second question is definitely in the affirmative. We, I think, as my colleague mentioned, we are going to be looking to other municipalities to look at best practices, and so not try to, reinvent the wheel, so to speak, especially because we mirrored our statute after other municipalities, is my understanding. With respect to your first question as to the timetable, actually, I think that the timing within our office, and I may stand to be corrected by Noreen Vincent, who is supervising us here in our office. We were looking at a timeline. We understand, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So I don't know if that comports with what your expectation was.
Well, no, I think, again, apologizing for coming into this in the middle of it and understanding that the initial motion was sort of, investigate whether we can do this, and then the subsequent motions are sort of create a program. I think the timing is going to be okay if we're talking 4 weeks on the outside to sort of get an ordinance in place.
If I may, just for a moment, I'm Noreen Vincent, also with the City Attorney's Office, and we are in the process. Deborah has actually started drafting, and we are down the road in terms of being able to put something together responsive to the council direction. One of the questions that we've been discussing is the fee study to support the fees. And so what's critical, of course, in order to comply with state laws, to make sure that we have a study that supports the fees that we're charging and that it's related to the services we're providing. So even though there are other municipalities that have similar programs, their fee schedule may be very different from ours. And so we are waiting. It's my understanding that we are waiting for that information in order to fill in the blanks. So I don't know if that's available or who has it, but we just need to make sure that the ordinance as drafted has the correct information with respect to the fees that we can charge.
Waiting for whom? Is it Prop 26?
It's a Prop 26 issue that, yes. And so we're waiting to see, and I don't know who has that, whether it's Building and Safety, CLA's office. I know there was a report put together that talked about $274, but I don't know if that's the report on which we're supposed to be relying. So
you need that information in order to sort of
we
do
want to
the
make
Prop
sure that
26 analysis.
Right.
That's correct. Is that my?
Yeah, additionally, as you've heard referenced by both departments, there have been some changes that are potentially going to affect what the scope of this ordinance is, and numbers, in fact, that may change. Looking for an update on how many properties would be on the registry, how many inspections that would require. What does that mean for the departments? Does that impact building and safety in a different way? Are we looking at a different number of inspectors? All of that is part of the fee analysis that we would then base the regulations on. And we can't put a number in without having the necessary basis for that number.
And who's doing the fee schedule analysis?
Steve, again, from the Department of Building and Safety. We had completed a fee study quite a while ago before this went to City Council and was was approved. And positions were based on the fee of $274. The information is part of the file. So, I'll be willing to forward it to the city attorney. CAO has it, CLA has it, and...
But
does the CLA?
Yeah.
Okay.
In addition to that, the determinations that I guess you make today on some of the other items on this agenda may impact what the numbers are, again, with that interior habitability that's being recommended now pursuant to the motion. Right. Will that change the numbers? That's a different analysis.
And it was just mentioned to me that in terms of what the city is looking to do with respect to habitability within the dwelling unit, that would also change the fee. So I guess it's trying to define exactly what it is.
Can we distinguish, though, between those two, the habitability and the vacant, and focus on the vacant?
We can. We can.
I was going to just mention, and just for some clarity, it would provide direction, I think, the expediency with which you seek. As mentioned, Building and Safety is developing a fee study based on additional inspections and work that they will be performing. The initial fee that is part of the ordinance and that's being charged was substantiated with fee analysis. In addition, LAHD's was as well. What I was going to suggest and just make a point is, in light of the fact that we are moving forward with due speed for the ordinance, what I'm envisioning based on this conversation is that there may be an incremental process to the ordinance, and what I would propose, if you think it's acceptable, is that based on the fact that we have a pending fee study for which we don't have the information to put it into the ordinance or to fold in certain elements of the ordinance, we could proceed with what we have right now, and then in due course, when all the other pieces fall together, we could come back with an amendment. And if people, the decision makers feel that's appropriate, that might be a solution.
Good thought. Mr. Senator.
Yeah, I think that is a reasonable approach to help expedite the process. But I got another question, though, and I couldn't glean it from the reports. Is it envisioned that this is going to be a public document, something online where citizens can log on and see if a house is registered or on the registry or not? Or how do we encourage transparency, encourage accountability, and encourage
We're
more folks to know what's going on?
We're looking for the housing department.
Housing maintains
because they
the
maintain
ordinance,
it.
or the registry, so.
I would submit that would be an appropriate question to pose to Building and Safety and to the Housing Department, because we're just merely the attorneys.
Is there any prohibition?
Well, anybody answer?
Well,
Yeah.
here's one thing we can ask the attorney. Is there any prohibition? Any concerns?
If all we're doing, all we're doing is just making it available to the public, a centralized list in which they can find what properties have been foreclosed on or in the process of foreclosure. I believe that's already public information. So making it available in a centralized location shouldn't be a problem.
I can tell you, for the Department of Building and Safety, it will be on our website. Whatever properties in the foreclosure registry will be on there identified.
Good.
And I would just also like to point out, I'm not from the criminal division, I'm on the civil side, but we do have a criminal division that does engage in nuisance abatement. So at some point, if you wanted to hear from them in terms of what they're doing and how their program is operating, I'm sure they'd be happy to come before you.
And I think that's really important to stress for the public, that nothing precludes folks from making the reporting and getting the city attorney's office involved. And if there's abatement issues, that can happen now on a case per case. And LADBS, I think, does an amazing job to that regard. So thank you for that.
I wanted to mention one final point that, just for in future reference, and again, it's a decision by policymakers. With respect to implementation for the full breadth of the ordinance, of course, at the tail end for those recalcitrant and non-compliant property owners of whatever nature, there may be remedies that we may seek through the city attorney's office by way of either civil enforcement or criminal remedies.
Yes, sure.
That's something that needs to be presented to the city attorney's office and decided by the city attorney and his staff. But I wanted to mention that because that will be another prospective sort of fee study, an element to the ordinance that we may not be able to address at the outset, but would be the subject of a further amendment.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually think that's really important, because what I would not want to see happen is, and this is, I guess, a conversation that we're going to have to decide on what happens, but you've got these folks who are in dire financial straits, who are losing their homes, and I would not want to see any sort of criminal I mean, if there's going to be a lien associated with the house, then it should go to the bank, and the bank has the resources to deal with it. If we've got squatters or folks who should not be in the house that are not the original owners nor the bank, maybe there ought to be some enforcement for those individuals who are taking residence in some of these abandoned properties. So I think that's going to be a really interesting policy conversation, because I don't think we ought to penalize folks who have already sort of hit a really sort of difficult time in their ownership.
There's no intention, or those are not our points or preferences.
Right.
We're looking at abandoned properties and how we hold people accountable and responsible first, and then we work our way down from there. Mr. Bryce, Senator? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you, too.
Nice to meet you.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And then what about all these? Oh, got it. Okay. Let's go again. Public comment. Lance Libiano.
Good afternoon, council members. Good afternoon, Lance Libiano. I do think there is a serious problem with bank-owned properties where the bank is not taking responsibility to do the necessary thing. I am a property owner in the city of LA. I like to maintain my property. LAHD does their annual or SCEP inspections. I pay the fees. I think my concern on this is, and if there's anything I can do as being a licensed real estate agent to help facilitate that, there are lists that come out on a daily basis, and this list we're talking about is not dead. It's constant. Every minute of every day, it's constantly changing. Who's in default, who's not in default, who's being sold. I think if we keep the focus on REO properties that are coming back to the banks, I think that's the best bet because they do have the resources and they are the ones that are
REO, new jargon.
REOs, real estate owned. Yes. My concern is if we're going to include NODs, which is notice of default, I could have a material breach of my contract with my bank for not providing something like their insurance policy or not filling out financial documents. I would then have a notice of default recorded, and I would now be subject to this. And I think that's the fear that I have is this has become overreaching, and I really think we should focus on REOs. We could do something where when the bank or when the notice of default, notice of trustee sales recorded, they typically have 21 days. And when a notice is completed, it's what they call a notice, it's a trustee's deed. We could have something where a trustee's deed, once it's executed, is required to immediately be notified to the new owner, which is the bank. That's my only concern. My concern is I just would like to keep it focused on the banks and not individual people that own properties or might be having a problem with their lender or anything else where a notice of default is put in there and then this happens.
We share your concerns and your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill? Bill Hui?
Good afternoon, Councilman. I know that many of you are newly elected and you're new to what the LHD does, but the Los Angeles Housing Department, the way it treats landlords, especially mom-and-pop landlords and minority landlords, is nothing short of a criminal operation.
Bill, let me ask you something. We want to focus on the proposals.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The criticisms of the department are fine, but this is not the form right now.
Is this number 3?
Yes, number 3.
I'm against it. I'll just keep it short.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
But we can just have the comments focus on the proposals while you're for them or against them.
General public comment.
Yeah, fine. That'll be fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. George. See you again. Yes, George. Thank you, George. Yes, sir. Mr. Millman, tell us why you don't like this proposal.
Good afternoon. Michael Millman, M-I-L-L-M-A-N. Well, welcome. Mr. Cervantes and I go back a long way, and I respect and admire his skills and oratory and talking. But when he talks, people like I, who are housing providers, we take a deep breath and we count our fingers. Let me tell you what's really at stake here. LAHD wants to move into single dwellings. They want to take that occupant's hand, and when they say unoccupied, they want to go in there and allege, well, maybe there's a roommate, maybe they're renting out a room or 2 rooms or 3 rooms, because they already told you they've collected $4 million in the kitty. We don't know what they've done with it. I have no problem with the Department of Building and Safety investigating unoccupied, rundown, dilapidated houses and taking whatever action is appropriate, whether you ding them for 274 or whatever the law allows them. And if they're really bad, let's run them right up to Mike Fuhrer and get them abated and get them in an orange jumpsuit. But be careful. Once upon a time, 2 units or less were exempt from rent stabilization. Mr. Fuentes came in here, and now we have 2 units folded under here. It never went before council, never went before anybody. I've seen over the last 10 years our good friends at LAHD expand their jurisdiction, and that's when it gets very scary. No owners, no landlords were ever contacted. No banks are here to talk about it. Nobody's here but LAHD and a few people from Building and Safety and the city attorney. I'd like to see a couple more chairs from the banks and from the apartment owners as well. Let's go slowly here, and if we craft something, let's be careful with our good friends at LAHD, because they will come after that single dwelling, because they already got $4 million, and they know there's more money. Thank you for your time.
Louis Eisenstein, Lou.
On the face, to someone who doesn't know, this seems like an okay thing, but if you look closer, this is an extremely shady and corrupt boondoggle. It's not about a small fee for a building that's blighted. It's about going inside a home, doing code enforcement, putting a lien on the house. Basically, you're going to make it harder to sell. You're not going to... When people buy homes, they don't want a home that has code enforcement action on it. They don't want a home that has a lien on it. They're not going to buy it. So that the house is going to be blighted even more. It's going to be staying in the neighborhood even more and ruining the neighborhood. This doesn't help the neighborhood get any better. This only helps the LAHD get more fines and fees, and then it'll allow them to go further encroaching our rights and giving us hell, which multifamily owners know all about. So you got to really think about this. This can't just be rubber stamped. You can't listen to whatever the LAHD says. In my experience, they're liars. And the LA Department of Building Safety, they can already inspect homes. They can already go by and look at homes that are not even in foreclosure. And if there's a problem, they can write a letter saying, please fix this. And if not, you can get a fine, or other things can happen. So the building department already has a law in the books that allows them to inspect these homes. And I just want to say, if you're going to buy a $50,000 home when there are $20,000 worth of fines, fees, and liens on the property, why would you buy it? Just let it stay there, let it sit, and let the housing department collect their fee. Which is what this is all about. So I'm against it.
Thank you. Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams, you left. Okay. Peter Kuhns. Oh, wait, not yet, Peter. No. Almost. General comments. Let's have Ann. Where's Ann? Ann Williams, please come up.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association, representing nearly 450 businesses employing 350,000 people in the Los Angeles region. Among our membership is a substantial number of banking institutions, and cities and financial institutions are working together more frequently in recent years, and the Foreclosure Registry is another example. This is because where there is blight, there is a common goal of addressing it. Recently, CCA and some of our key banking members sat down with representatives from the CLA's office, the Department of Building and Safety, then Councilmember Garcetti's office, and the Housing Department. The meeting was very productive, and it was clear that the city and the industry can work together to keep our communities healthy. The industry looks forward to continued collaboration and open channels of communication as we move forward. And for the new faces around the table, I'll be stopping into your offices today to make sure that you and your staff have contact information for the banks so you always have ready access so we can keep the dialogue going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Doug Arsenault.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for this opportunity. I represent the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, representing more than 370 businesses employing more than 100,000 people. We just want to say that we want to continue with the collaborative approach that's gone on with the housing department and with the banks to ensure that blight is addressed and is done in a reasonable manner. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, for the proposal, Peter Kuhns.
Good afternoon, council members. Peter Kuhns with ACE, Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. I just wanted to respond to three quick things that just came up. Somebody mentioned that they're encouraging you to go slowly. I think that's humorous because it's been 3 years since this ordinance passed and not one single bank has been fined for any property at all. So go slowly is, I don't know how much slower you can go. Number two is the question about the $4 million that's already been raised. We actually don't think that's enough money. I don't even know if the housing department really explained that they're actually using some of that money, but we estimate that each foreclosed house, and we have a study we can provide you to kind of back this up, costs the city up to $20,000 per house in increased costs for everything from the inspections to police response. You're going to hear in a minute about a house that's had police police officers called to the house on multiple times. That's very expensive. So we actually think that $4 million is nowhere near the amount of money that's needed to deal with this property. And with regard to the comment on the NOD properties, here's the challenge. There's a lot of families that when they get in foreclosure, even before the house actually gets sold, they walk away. So who's responsible for that house? You got to hold the bank that holds the note responsible for the house. The city attorney's office spoke to this a little bit, and we've had extensive conversations with them about the fact that they don't think that there's actually a legal problem with holding the bank accountable when the house is actually vacant. And in the city of Oakland, where we've worked extensively, they've done this in a way where the NOD has held up. So I would propose that some people are just raising that as an issue to oppose the ordinance because they don't want this ordinance in place. But we don't see any problem, and it seems like the city attorney doesn't see any problem with actually holding the banks accountable in the NOD properties when they're vacant, when the homeowner has walked away. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Emily Gibson for the proposal. Ms. Gibson, how are you?
I'm just fine. And how are all of you?
Good.
Gentlemen and ladies. I brought my notes up here because I tend to be a little long-winded. I want to speak both as a member of ACE, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, and as a longtime resident of South Central Los Angeles. I own a home on East 47th Place. So I want to get immediately to what I want to say. I want to say that we support particularly point 1 on the agenda, because finally we can get a fee that can be used to cover the cost of inspections on the blighted bank-owned houses. Now, this is going to bring about an accountability of sorts, and certainly as far as I'm concerned, it's going to shortstop the hedging and dodging and tawdry excuses that have heretofore prevented the enforcement of this much-needed ordinance that was passed, nearly 3 years ago, and never enforced, allegedly because we lacked the money for inspectors. This point 1 gives banks like Chase Bank, that owns a foreclosed property on the street where I live, it gives them the accountability where they will have to pay the fee for their own inspection, and that is something that I appreciate. Now, I want to bring a sense of urgency here. I want to bring a sense of urgency here because I want to speak directly about a property that's across the street and 2 houses west of where I live. I was there this morning. That's why I have a rash on my face and neck. My fingernails are broken. My pocketbook is empty because this morning several residents and I were out there from 6 o'clock this morning until 9 o'clock, and we were picking up the trash and the filth. I want you to know that the stench of raw garbage that seeps out behind this boarded up structure, the broken and discarded furniture, the sidewalk littered. We're talking about quality of life issues, and I know that I've run out of time, but the sense of urgency is here, and I just simply hope that I've said the right things and that I've put it on your mind.
Thank you. Mr. Fuentes.
Have you spoken with the Department of Building and Safety and reported the property? Because we've got a representative here. If you could give them the address, I think it would be helpful.
150 and 150 and a half East 47th Place. And in terms of complaining and to building and safety and the Department of Sanitation and whomever, we complain, but the powers that be have been deaf.
Well, they're not all deaf. In fact, at your most recent meeting, or the last meeting I attended, I got a list of about 30 addresses. And so we certainly have forwarded those on, and we're going to be following up with those as well. But we appreciate citizens when they step up. Don't just complain, but give us exact addresses, give us locations so that we can follow up. So you can hold us accountable, and we can make sure that staff is accountable for these actions. So thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Congratulations. Looking forward to working with all of you. My name's Larry Gross. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for Economic Survival. We fully support this ordinance, but we have great concerns about Building and Safety's original intent to just do drive-by inspections, and thus we urge support for the Garcetti-Alarcon inspection motion to be implemented. The foreclosure crisis is clearly a national disgrace, but it's especially unjust for the forgotten victims, tenants. Tenants who've done nothing wrong, paid their rent on time, but all of a sudden, due to no fault of their own, find themselves living in foreclosed property owned by banks or financial institutions who have no desire to be good landlords. Instead of holding these banks accountable, the drive-by inspection approach would empower the banks to continue being slumlords. If the housing department has no problem inspecting occupied multifamily foreclosed units, there should be no reason Building and Safety can't do the same. The message being sent by limiting the inspections to just drive-by is that if you're a tenant living in a slum unit owned by a bank, we don't care about the conditions you're living in as long as the house looks good from the outside. This makes it imperative that you require the Building and Safety Department to do the similar inspections as the Housing Department, that of inspecting interiors of occupied foreclosed rental units and citing for housing code violations. The fee structure should cover that. You need to look at that, and anything less should be unacceptable to everyone involved here. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Steve Askin?
Yeah, that's my bad handwriting. Sorry about it.
You must be a doctor.
No, my training is in accounting.
Okay.
My name's Steve Askin. I'm Research Director for Good Jobs LA, and I want to especially acknowledge Mr. Price, who we saw on one of the tours that we did together with ACE and SEIU to look at this crisis. I want to make it very clear today, based on a year of research and more that several organizations have done, which will supply to your staffs, that what we had a year ago was already the worst practices in California on dealing with the foreclosure crisis. We submitted a year ago a report based on visits by dozens of community members to 4,000 foreclosed and foreclosing properties in South and East LA. We submitted literally hundreds of complaints based on that to the appropriate authorities. There was action taken on exactly 0 of those. We have a reality that in some of the cities mentioned today, in Oakland, also in El Monte, also in Riverside, when the crisis began, 2008, 2009, those cities implemented foreclosure ordinances very quickly. Each of the cities I've named has collected more in fines and has done a much better job than LA of compelling banks to clean up foreclosed properties. I think all of us who've worked on this were particularly disturbed to hear officials say that only now are they consulting with the city of Oakland, which has a very successful program. The fact of the matter is that this council, your predecessors on this council, voted more than a year ago to give the city attorney's office 60 days to come back with a revised enforceable ordinance. That was a very reasonable mandate. There is no basis for delaying any further at this point. I was interested to hear that the banks, with the help of CCA, have been meeting with city officials and city administrators on this. I will make the offer on behalf of my organization, on behalf of ACE, and on behalf of SEIU. We'd be happy to come into any of those meetings and have a dialogue with city staff, with city officials, and with the banks in which we can present the evidence that shows faster action is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Stephanie Lane or Lake? Lane?
Hi, council members. How are you doing? My name is Stephanie Lane. I'm also from Good Jobs LA. And I want to thank you all for being here. And I also want to thank the city staff for working so hard on this. I know this has been a difficult issue we've been working on for a long time. I don't want to repeat my colleague, But I do want to reinforce the fact that we've been working on this for a long time. A lot of the things that have been said today are things that we have recommended and offered solutions from a year ago. The updates to the Foreclosure Registry Ordinance have been on the table since June of last year. And we really think that there is a lack of urgency in making sure that this ordinance gets introduced and that enforcement can get out as soon as possible. We know that the cost of foreclosure to the city of LA is really gigantic. Trillions of dollars have been lost in the city due to lost home values, lost property taxes, and all sorts of city services that have been needed to use because of foreclosed properties. We have submitted a list of recommendations that include increasing this cost, the cost associated with registering foreclosed property to reflect the real cost of foreclosure on our city, which would be more like the city of Oakland, which is over $500. The city of San Jose does a quarterly fee of $370. We also think that we really should have a program coordinator that's able to coordinate all of the agencies that are involved in this really complicated process that obviously is taking a long time because we have 2 housing departments involved doing enforcement. We have the city attorney's office that might be doing further litigation. And we know that best practices in other cities have shown that having someone who can be the person who is the point person talking to banks makes sure that banks are out there cleaning up their properties and making sure that this is working. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. James Johnson.
Chairman Cedillo, members of the committee, welcome and congratulations. We got to do something quicker than this. I've been sitting here absolutely frustrated because it seems like we're in like a spiral circle conversation. It seems like the same conversation. It's like with my son, when I tell him, you really can't do this in A, B, C, and D, and then he repeats it, at least he thinks he repeats it back to me, and it's totally different or it's still the same, but it's still ultimately the same conversation. It doesn't seem like we're getting down the road to nitty-gritty. I think the only thing that, frankly, I've heard in many respects that makes some sense is frankly what the woman from the city attorney's office suggested, and we're pretty frustrated to the point where if we can't do what we believe needs to be a more holistic approach, then perhaps we need to look at some pieces of some piecemeal and look at timelines, because it just seems like we're in this big circle and nothing seems to be moving. And yet, as we well know, notwithstanding the fact that, here in the city there has been some rebound, obviously there's been a somewhat national rebound on housing starts, 28.3% increase last month here in LA. So in some communities, it's going a lot better than it had 3 or 4 years ago, but we know the sisters and brothers from ACE, they have example of what's really happening in many of our communities, and we need to deal with it. So one, I have a deep respect for the city staff that have to deal with these and other real challenging issues, obviously. But, a year, 3 months, a year, 4 months, 2 years, 3 years, it's way too long, and begins to put on the minds of some of us who sometimes have suspicions about, are there forces that are trying to slow down the process? Because, let me end with this, I've been to at least 4 or 5 of these meetings in the last year, and I've not heard as many people who have problems, concerns, outright opposition as we do now. And I've been around this building long enough to know that, those folks are going to be at council when we do all the work and due diligence, and they'll come to council and say, no, but where were you when many of us were struggling to try to deal with this issue? So we got a lot of work to do, and it's very frustrating, but we got to get this done because this is what our communities and our residents deserve.
Mr. Johnson, thank you. With the steady hand of my colleague, I think we're making 3 motions, right? One will be to instruct the city attorney for a draft ordinance with the $274 fee. The second will be to continue in committee and instruct building and safety to work with personnel to hire the 6 employees ASAP to do all that they can to get them in place. And then with respect to the third item, we will continue that in committee for 30 days. So those are the motions before us. So moved. Second. We get public comment. Is that what we do? Could I explain him? Well, I have my own perspective on this. He's the president of the council. I assume that he is engaged in some matters that, while this is a very important meeting, that have equal importance or other importance that is relevant to the benefit of the city of Los Angeles. And so that's where I believe Mr. Wesson is at, and I'm good with that. I'm sorry? Oh, Mr. Buscaino was unavailable today. Yeah, he's in his district. Thank you, though. Okay. So we are good?
We have general public comment.
The meeting for general public.
No, I know we have general public comment, but I just... Yeah, we're all good. We're all good. I welcome general public comment, but I don't welcome repetition. I mean, I think we are clear about where we are on all these matters. All of you have been very clear on your perspectives. I see Bill inching forward, and I'm happy to hear critiques of the department, but frankly, I would like our discussions to be focused on what we've done today and how we proceed. Yes, ma'am, I'm happy to hear from you, though. I'm not going to prohibit general comment. You may approach. Sure, please. Yes. Oh, on the cards. Did you put a card in?
I did put a card in, yes. My name is Esther Bleisch.
So for the record, ma'am, you need to fill out a card so we can be more... Oh, you okay,
card.
Perfect.
Esther Bleisch. There must be a card. I filled it. Esther Bleisch.
Okay.
Okay.
Esther, I'm going to ask you to proceed because I have your card right here,
Good.
and thank you.
Thank you, council members. We appreciate your hard work. I am speaking on behalf of apartment owners and management companies of multi-units. I have been doing this work for 40 years, and the agency has grown and grown and grown. Other agencies overlap. There's a lot of waste of money in the city of LA, and I will meet with Eric Garcetti. The meeting is just about ready to be set, to tell him about a lot of money wasted with duplicate agencies. Rent stabilization, health department, code enforcement, SCEP, REAP, and now something fancy added, tenant advocate by the inner city, and who knows where it will continue. The policing is excessive, is one-sided, it is unfair, and we think that a lot need to be spoken and done to have the tenants also be responsible and held accountable to a lot of the violations. It is not right for a building to be inspected and 3 years later everything to be upside down. It is not right for a unit to be given in tip-top condition to a tenant and 6 months later all the agencies descend on the owners.
Thank you, Esther.
Turn right on West
Oh.
Street.
Thank you, Esther.
We hope that you will have the heart and the mind to be fair and right and democratic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Miss very popular Bruce Lee Boucher.
Members, my name is Bruce Bouchot. I manage a property in Koreatown. It's a small building, 16 units. We have passed all our inspections with the housing department with flying colors. Never had an issue. The owner takes pride of their units. We increased the rent 3% only. We are allowed to a tenant back in February. As we believe as a retaliation, he called housing department because there was peeling paint in the bathroom. They sent the inspector. We received the charge of $201.50, and then a reinspection fee for another $201.50. We believe that our building's in top shape. They could have just let us know, send us an requesting the repair. We could have done it. We did the repair. We called the inspector. There's two charges, the $201, and then the inspection was done over the phone with the tenant. He didn't even go, and we still received the charge. We just think it's unfair.
Okay, thank you very much. Bill Huey. And if we can get Jutta Romero will be next after Mr. Huey. Mr. Huey, you've got 2 minutes, or 1 minute, it looks like. Public comment is 1 minute? Or
It's usually 2 minutes, right?
Pardon me, Richard Williams, City Clerk, the chair requested that the general public comment be held to 1 minute.
Okay, in keeping with the chair's request, we'll go ahead and do 1 minute. Mr. Huey, speak fast.
Yeah, here, I'm the president of Fair Housing Coalition. We believe in equality under the law for landlords and renters. Anybody who agrees with me, please stand up. Okay, now here's the thing. The LA Housing Department is a criminal operation. They come and they pick on minority landlords and mom and pop landlords. And when they come into the building, first of all, most of the people that own the older buildings, a lot of us have low-income renters. So we're not getting a lot of money for the apartment. A lot of them, the renters have been there a long time. The units are severely overcrowded. Now, with the money we don't have, we can't make the building pristine. The city comes along, the housing department, and says, no, the building has to be pristine, and they'll put us in REAP for peeling paint. Now, after we've turned in receipts that we've done all the repairs, Helen Morales, who's not a judge and she's not a lawyer, she wears a Halloween costume, will decide not to give us back our money that she's taken out of REAP. The reason so many apartment buildings in L.A. have been foreclosed on is because of REAP. You know, the REAP is an unfair thing. It was meant for large slumlords, and now they're using this REAP law like a machine gun against landlords who have the equivalent of a parking violation. The LHD needs to be revamped.
Thank you, Mr.
It needs to be revamped.
We'll be working with you, I'm certain, on the REAP thing. Jutta Romero, please. And then after that, Gordon Millman will be next.
Hello, congratulations to the new council members. I am complaining about the Los Angeles Housing Department. I think that is the most corrupt organization in the city. From the top down, Mercedes Marquez, nobody ever replies to anything. So we have an inspection next week, and we asked the inspector, we called, we emailed, asked him if they can postpone it a little bit. Nobody ever replied. So yesterday I called the mayor's department, and there was a nice lady, Sally Martinez, so she said she would help, and they would contact us, but still they haven't. So may I give you this just to see?
Yeah, you'll give it to the clerk, and then I think we do have the housing department here to see if we can grant them, and Mr. Cervantes will have somebody see if they are able to grant you an extension to deal with your issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Millman. Gordon Millman. Oh, I'm sorry, Gordon Millman. My apologies, Mr. Gordon Millman. We have two Millmen. I guess it would be Millmen. That's right.
I'm Gordon Millman. I was born in L.A. Not exactly young, not in exactly good condition. I consider myself a small business owner. And the LA Housing Department doesn't like small business owners. They seem like they're trying to put me out of business. I don't think it's right. That's what it comes down to.
Do you have a specific concern that you want to address today? You've got about 30 seconds here, sir. Is there an issue, a violation?
No, we've done everything that they asked us to do. We jumped through the hoops. The building's in perfect condition, and they still won't release us. So I consider it a fact that they are trying to get rid of us as business owners, that's all.
Great, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Louis Einstein? Eisenstein, I'm sorry, my apologies. Eisenstein.
Good evening again. I just want to talk about the LAHD, since this is the Housing Committee meeting. This is what I came here for the public comment. I didn't even know these two other agenda items were on the list, but every time you guys put something through, it just seems corrupt and shady. And just, yeah, as I said before, this organization, LAHD, is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They're getting more power. They're intruding in our lives. They're finding and feeding us. We have apartment buildings. We would love to keep them as apartment buildings, but, you know, now we're considering knocking them all down, putting up luxury condos. I think, screw it. Why continue investing in the city when you can make a lot more money doing something else? So, you know, if the LAHD wants more housing in the city and they want, you know, lower rents and people living affordably, then they have to come with landlords, talk to them, and we have to come up with a policy and have to have total comprehensive reform of the housing department and the laws. Otherwise, it's not feasible anymore. Thank you.
Mr. Michael Millman.
Good afternoon again. I would be remiss in my duty to not congratulate each of you and say AGLA welcomes you to the second largest city in the country and the best city. Let's speak truth to power. Housing policy rests with this committee, not LAHD, not Mike Fuhrer, not Michael Millman, not anybody else. You set policy. If the REAP program doesn't square with the United States Constitution and is unlawful and there's no due process, it's this committee that can stop the Helen Moraleses for putting on a costume and pretending to be a judge and being paid $200,000. Never even went, sir, to law school. Okay? You can stop it. You set policy here. Let's have some outreach with owners and tenant activists, not just lunch with Harold Greenberg or Michael Millman. Let's get a real committee together and pound out something that's fair. Thank you for your time.
Nicholas Gessler, please.
Thank you. Congratulations on your new committee. I'm sure you've got a lot of work ahead. My family's been in Los Angeles since 1923, and I received a PhD from UCLA in anthropology.
Go Bruins.
Pardon?
Go Bruins.
Go Bruins, okay. Until UC ran out of money, and then I ended up teaching in North Carolina at Duke University. So I'm sorry that I can't be here more often, even though I do have somebody looking after my properties year-round. I'm one of many small landlords who feel that they're being unfairly treated by the LAHD, and I strongly recommend that you would keep a critical eye open on the reports that LAHD authors. I've found in reading some of the past reports that they do not provide an unbiased sampling of the housing providers or of housing users. And recently, until recently, I've had no problems with LAHD, but recently I've found that inspectors have been vehemently against landlords, disingenuous and at times fanatical. One last comment I would like to make is that it's been my tenants who have complained, not against me, but to me about LAHD practices, and also to our council members. So please ensure that we small landlords get a fair shake in whatever decisions you're making. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Catalina Orozco. Hola.
Good afternoon. In the past, I've been settled my problem with REAP program. It was closed. 2 documents, closed 2006. Mrs. Brighthop back here retaliated against me because inspectors trespassed into my property. She took retaliation, and now I'm from criminal prosecution from the same thing that from the past. It has cost me a lot of money to keep the housing department that entered illegally into my property, and now I'm on for criminal prosecution because of that woman. Something needs to be done. Please help me.
Finally, I have three people I spoke to earlier. Erica Bristow. No, we're on just now general comment.
Good afternoon and congratulations. Again, my name is Erica Bristol. I represent Dr. Zyra McLeod with the issue concerning the African Community Resource Center. It's our understanding that the city is working with the Department of Housing to transfer a shelter, a necessary shelter for victims of human trafficking and domestic violence to another charity. We're asking the Department of Housing to please hold off on this. We want to keep the African Community Resource Center charity alive and well. Dr. McLeod is willing to work with the Department of Housing in the city to put in a structure in place to make sure checks and balances are in place. I'm willing to donate my services. I've been corporate secretary and in-house counsel, and I've worked with charities and nonprofits, so I know what needs to be done. And we're asking for time. We're asking to please do not transfer this property until you've had a chance to look at the proposal that I sent to the city attorneys dated July 19th, and I'd be willing to give you a copy again here to see what we're offering before it's transferred to another property.
Okay, thank you. Ambassador, please, Dr. Zyra McLeod.
Congratulations to my good friends who are senators, now city councils. I know that I'm in the right place at the right time. You've been well, treated us well, women and children in the Senate, and I'm sure you will be treated well here at the city. I'm here today because of that's my attorney that just represented me, and I just want to say very quickly that if you would please just hold off and give us time to work things out with the city. I've spoken with the housing department, David Zakes. I have to say he's a really good guy. I like him and I like to work with him. And the shelter that they're trying to transfer our property over to, I would like to make sure that we partner with them. I think it's a good organization. Also, I would like to say that you can check my background. I'm not here just as a host. I served on the Inglewood School Board, National Council of Negro Women in AACP, and one of your members here has also worked with me and on the same committee. So if you would at least give him the benefit of the doubt for my credibility.
Sure.
Thank you. God bless
Credibility
you.
is not in doubt here, my dear. And now Dr. Olatunji Ferguson, Reverend, the good Reverend.
Thank you very much and congratulations. I'm just actually here to support Dr. McLeod in her bid to reorganize this very, very important shelter. There's nothing like this in the Los Angeles or in Southern California as I know it. And as an immigrant coming from Sierra Leone, we have the highest per capita incidence of female genital circumcision in the world. And some of these young ladies are forced into female circumcision, and this is a shelter that helps women in this kind of position, not only medically, but as far as immigration-wise and whatnot. There's nothing like it here, and it's the only shelter that I know of that helps Africans. Other ethnic groups have their shelters and stuff, and we don't want this one to be taken away from us. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you. That, yes, please come up. We have the final comments.
Sorry, Frank Bush again. I just want to let you know that I checked into the one property the lady mentioned too on the 150 47th, and we had orders on it. It was occupied. However, it became vacant. We've also recently issued an abate order on it. The compliance date's August 2nd. We will meet with her and make sure that it gets taken care of.
Thank you. That was 150 and 150 and a half.
40,
Correct.
47.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes.
Just pardon me, Mr. Chair, that Richard Williams, City Clerk. For the record, I just wanted to make sure I have the correct dispositions for each of the items. For item number 1, we are continuing this for 30 days. Item number 2.
But we are instructing the city attorney to draft the ordinance with the fee that was talked about, the 274.
Okay, and then we are also instructing the Department of Building and Safety to work with personnel to hire the 6
Yes.
staff members as soon as
ASAP.
possible.
Mhm.
And then we'll continue items 1, 2, and 3 for 30 days.
Correct.
Okay, and then for item number 4, we are approving the city administrative officer report recommendations as amended to have the Department of Housing perform outreach to the neighborhood council.
Yes, we asked them to do neighborhood councils and then more, they had talked about more aggressive marketing and
From the ethnic associations.
Right.
Other groups.
professional groups in the interested area and the ethnic groups in the area.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank all of you for being here this afternoon. I look forward to continuing this dialogue as we move forward to make this city a better and greater city for everyone involved. Thanks so much. Good afternoon, sir.